Hey everybody, welcome back to Artists of Transformation. The series was created to help people bring more love, joy, and healing through art and through different healing modalities. Today's guest is the wonderful Leah Guzman. She is a board certified art therapist, as well as a practicing artist all her life and an international best-selling author. She supports creatives in transforming pain into power. Leah, thank you so much for chatting, and I would love to hear more about your story. How did you get started, and how did you just love art in general?
Hi, Stephanie. Thank you so much for having me on your beautiful series. I'm excited to hear all the interviews. Yeah, like you had mentioned, I've been an artist all my life, which is really awesome. I still have like a little sculpture that I made like from kindergarten. But it wasn't until like high school when I started to take it a lot more seriously. I moved around a lot, and it was like emotionally it was really hard for me to just kind of go to different states and start over. It was my mom's job, and so she was a flight attendant at the time, so we had to kind of get up and move to different places. And my art was kind of like my savior at that time, and it really just helped me kind of process my emotions and just give me something to do as well. Because starting like making new friends and things like that. So I have to say that that was kind of a point in my life where I knew that it was really important to me. And it also was kind of a catalyst because at that time I was putting my shows into my artwork into shows, into like juried shows, and I had one of the jurors had asked me like, "What are you interested in?" I was like, "Well, I love art, I love psychology." And they're like, "Well, have you ever heard of art therapy?" And I was like, "No, what's that?" So they sent me this article all about it, and I was like, "Oh wow, like this is helping people with their emotions." And I was like, I know that like that it's helping me, so I want to be able to do that too. So it was kind of like my catalyst of saying, this is the direction that I want to go in. So I ended up getting my undergraduate in studio sculpture, even though I got into painting as well, and then ended up getting my master's in art therapy. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been practicing for 20 years now. I can't believe it. Time goes by so quick.
Yeah, you look like you're fresh out of college, although
Oh,
like 20
thanks.
years, I can't believe it. But I believe it because your work is beautiful, I could tell. And yeah. So I'm curious, have you always felt like you wanted to support other people through art, or is that just because you just felt like how healing it was for you as well?
Yeah, most definitely. I think that I've always liked that connection of being able to support other people because I actually ended up going to art school when I was an undergraduate, and I lived in San Francisco for a little bit, and I went to the Art Institute. And it was an interesting experience because I actually felt really disconnected. I felt it was more very ego based at the time. It was like always about like making something that was going to sell, or it wasn't like my jive. Like I just felt like my art was more about the healing element, and that was okay. I had to be honest with myself. Like I'm glad I went to go experience like what art school was about. And I was like, hey, wait, I need to be honest with myself. I did a really cool art piece there, though. I remember I went on the roof of the building and they had like all these concrete bricks, and I actually created a labyrinth. And I made it out of like little sheets of metal, and I put like little grass seeds. And so like you had to walk through the grass. So it was like my meditation practice of watering the grass every day, and you have to get to the middle, and then there would be like a little treat, and I put like little fortune cookies. So I had to like present this to the class. And everyone got like a little fortune cookie that had like a message for them. So yeah, so it was a good experience, but I like just doing something like that. I knew that I was like, oh yeah, I'm on my right path of, yeah, I do think it's important for me to like sell my work and put my artwork out there. I do feel like, so it's kind of like I'm balancing two worlds, of the healing path of giving to someone, but also creating art for myself too. And not making it just because it's a pretty picture, but just making it for my own self-care practice. And if it sells, but it's more of like, it's for me as well.
Yeah, that's so important. You really need that, like where, you're giving back, but also giving to yourself so that you can replenish from a full cup.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, that's so awesome that you had that like creative and fortune cookies. It's really fun. And then I'm wondering, like, when you're creating and I'm going through that process, what does it feel like to go from like, is it just like a very meditative practice, or how do you recommend other people try that if they're just like, oh, I would love to do something that Leah's doing?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because since I started coming out more online, like about art therapy, because a lot of people, like, especially when I started 20 years ago, they're like, "What is that? What are you talking about?" Right? And I was like, "Well, it's basically if you were going to go to a psychologist or go to like a mental health counselor and you wanted to go talk to them, but you get to actually make art about what you're feeling and then talk about it." So that's kind of like how I describe it. And it's interesting because I find that so many artists who are dealing with mental health issues like anxiety, depression, past traumas, things like that, they end up going to like traditional verbal therapy. And I'm like, well, why are you using your art as your superpower? It's like we speak in this language of colors, of symbolism, of, being able to it's like our natural way of communicating, as artists. And so it's like, why don't you try it? So I just feel like at this point in my life, I want to get louder to let people know of, hey, you have this opportunity to, if you need support, try art therapy. There's so many of us out there, which is really cool. We're online, so that you can, and we all have different styles too. So it's like it matters, like if you resonate with the person and if you feel like that's a good fit. But yeah, so it's just an opportunity to try something that you're already naturally inclined to do. And you get that both worlds of actually creating art and then also, about your life, and then you get to talk about it as well.
Mm. And what does talking about your art and do? Like, does that also make a difference?
Most definitely, yeah, because it's part of the journey. I said, like when you're doing like art therapy, it's like you're making art about your life. It's like, well, what happened in this experience? How did that feel? Okay, well, let's reflect on it. So it's like you're getting it out of your head and you're putting it in front of you. Like, oh yeah, well, this means something to me, right? You're putting the meaning on it, and you're like, okay, well, what is what is that meaning, and where do you want to go with it? So a lot of times it might be just to release an emotion, honor it, but then also kind of transform it too. It's like, okay, well, where do you want to go? What are those goals that we're looking for? And that's where that problem solving is really cool. It's like you get to use your art as a method to like make new pathways. And that's actually what happens in your brain is like there's new neural pathways that are created when you make art about it. Like you're like, oh my gosh, I could actually try this on, or I could try this on, or I could try this, and you can make art about it. And it's like I've manifested really cool things like through my own art, actually going to see an art therapist too, because I was going through a dark time, of like just realizing that, hey, I want to have my own studio, and hey, I want to have like time to create and things like that. So like being able to like see your desires, tapping into your heart's desire, tapping into your soul, and then creating art about it, like giving yourself that space. So as kind of like as artists, we kind of think of, okay, we got to make this art series, or we got to make something that's going to sell. But it's also there's just other part where it is just for you, and where you can explore those things in a different way. So I would say, like, I always feel like I'm like managing two worlds, but it's kind of like it is important to take that time to just check in with yourself, like how you're feeling, or what do you really want? What direction do you want to go? What are your desires? And then being able to create art about that as well.
Wow, that is so important. What do you use? Do you use like paint, markers, or just like every and anything?
Yeah, I don't have my journal in front of me. I do a lot of journaling. Art journaling is really powerful for me. I try to do art journaling every day. I do write every day because that just helps connect me, just help me feel grounded. Kind of like the artist pages, I do that. But if I'm going to do art journaling, usually I'll do it afterwards. I'm just going to reflect more on my feelings. I love oil pastels. They're real fluid. I love using acrylic paints. Um, but again, I think it's up to the artist. I mean, I work with other art therapists or by other like clients that that have their own art practice, and they're more collage artists. And they're like, I love like they're naturally inclined to use the collage of the paint, or they're watercolorists and naturally. So a lot of times I would say if you're gonna like try to use this as a practice, then use what you're comfortable using. Yeah.
Mm. What are you most comfortable using and why?
Yeah, I like my oil pastels. I like acrylic. I like acrylic paint because of the the thickness of it, and that it dries pretty fast. And if I don't like something, I can just kind of cover it up. Um, and for my fine art, more of like if I'm going to do a portrait or things like that, it's interesting. I like to use oil, like so. That's just like it's a different medium and different feels different. But yeah, so I guess like for my own like self care practice, I do like to use acrylic and layering, just to make it thick. And I like the punch of the color is, yeah, I like that. I like the what oil pastels. They have like a punch of color as well. Like they're thick, and that's kind of like more my style. Putting it out there, yeah.
I love what you said, where you're just like the punch and like that boldness.
Mhm.
You mentioned like wanting to kind of like almost unleash into like more freedom. Can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit about that? Like, is there a story there, or is that just like, we need to be as artists and as humans like more expressive?
Yeah, well, I think that it's like part of our gift of being on this earth to fully express ourselves, right? And I feel like I'm on that journey as well of coming from a place where, I have been an artist all my life, but it's not like I've been an artist always showing the world what I've been doing. It was actually I was practicing art therapy. I want to say for about 10 years, and I went through complete burnout, just from I didn't have a self care practice, and it was kind of like my dark night of the soul. And that's when I got support from art therapists as well. But it was during that time that I had those realization of like, oh my gosh, I do want that studio and I do want time to create, but I want to show it bigger. Like I want to like share my art with the world. I want to be bolder, and really just express myself. And I remember how scared I was. I remember the first time even like posting on Facebook, I went and hid under my covers in my bed. I was like, oh my God. It's like just because you're an artist and you've done it like forever, it doesn't mean that it's like so vulnerable, right? It's like you just feel like you're showing up naked. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get judged. Oh my gosh, what are people gonna think? Obviously, I'm not that way anymore, thank God. But it is that process of putting yourself out there, and the interesting part of the evolution is, when I first started, I think there was a lot of looking for outside validation, and I realized that I didn't need that anymore. And I think that comes with the freedom, that you were just asking about, is because when I realized that, putting myself out there is really just about sharing the love. Like I love creating, and it puts me in a happy place, and I can just share it with you, and I don't care what you think about it. Like I could just, it's there's no, I'm not looking for like a like button or anything like that. So I think the freedom comes with that too, of you just be yourself and just share. That's where freedom comes from. Yeah.
Yeah, and that being able to just express who you are, it's like it's from a very healthy place where you don't need that validation. And I'm wondering, because I feel like, especially like beginning artists and like younger people probably feel, and society feel like they need validation. I'm
Mhm.
wondering how we can like turn that on its head and be like, it's okay. You don't really like, it's just like, how do you, yeah, build up your reserves of self-love so that it doesn't matter, you know?
Oh, most definitely. Yeah, it goes. straight to, your own self-worth and saying, I'm so worthy of giving myself the space. I'm so worthy of showing up and taking up space, um, and just being myself. And I think that that's really magnetic when you can do that, right? We look at influencers or look at people who are doing that or just showing up. Obviously, they are getting judged, but they don't care. I mean, there's always going to be that polarity. There's always going to be judgment because that's what people do. It's like what humans do. And it's just like you have to stand in your power and just like, well, this is what I stand for. And this is what I'm about. So it's like that mission becomes bigger than your fear. And you got to know what your mission is. Like, if I want that freedom, then I have to let go of the perfectionism. I have to let go of the scared of someone judging me, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like more important than the fear to have freedom in how you are.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So it's getting in touch with your values of what's important to you and why you're doing it.
Okay. So what process would you do? Would you be like writing down your values or would you just like consciously be like, okay, like give yourself a pep talk? Do you have like any kind of process where, you're trying to like express yourself if you're feeling stuck?
Yeah, definitely. I say honor the stuckness. I don't like to bypass the feelings. I would say make art about it. What does that stuckness look like? Do you feel like you're in a mud pit? Are you like have like huge walls around you? Are they brick or are they, what are those walls made out of? Like I like literally make a metaphor about that stuckness. And say like, where is it coming from? Why are you feeling stuck? When I was like talking about that like dark night of the soul, like when I went to an art therapist, it was interesting. I didn't realize I was such a people pleaser. The reason that I was going through what I was going through is that I was saying yes to everybody else and not saying yes to myself. So I really had to like put up boundaries and put up walls to say, I actually have these desires. And for me to get there and to do them, if I want to have like a private practice, if I want to have to do my art on a consistent basis, then I need to make time for it. And I'm gonna have to say no to some people, or no to these obligations that, that aren't really lighting me up. So yeah, so it's kind of like the twofold of one, getting in touch with, hey, what is that desire? What is it that you really want? Taking that time, make art about it. And then also making that other side of saying, what's stopping me? What does that look like? What does the stuckness look like? And then dig even deeper and say, where is, what's the pattern of behavior here? What experiences I have? That's kind of where it's good to have someone else. Like, 'cause that's why it's good to have an art therapist or have, you know what I mean? That support or because a lot of times we're not even cognitively, like consciously aware of the patterns of behavior or what's happening. So that's gives you an example of how an art therapist could support you. It's like, okay, well, this is happening, and then this is happening, and then you're like, oh yeah, that's why I'm stuck, right? To make the shifts in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you can't really see it from your outside perspective. Like you really have to have that support, if that makes sense, or like your own perspective.
Yeah, it's kind of like a mirror that's kind of reflecting back. And I mean, you do have your art reflecting back, but also someone else to bounce it off of,
Mm,
um, to kind of give you another perspective as well. Like, oh, I didn't see it that way, right?
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
art therapy is amazing. I think everyone should do it.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it's good for everybody. We all need
for
it.
real. There's something around that. I was like, so like how do people like when you're in like that dark night and you're like trying to like shut off the mind because the mind is very powerful in those moments. And like you're wanting to like focus on your art, but then you have like your thoughts. How do people like or how do you specifically even just transmute your thoughts so that you can actually even create, like put that, pen to paper, that um, yeah. And then like when you're actually in that process, how do you allow that to flow versus just like judging your work? Because I know like in the beginning I was like that.
Yeah. Well, when I was actually in that dark night of the soul, I mean, I was like waking up at like 3 a.m., crying, like sitting in my bathroom writing my journal. Like, I was kind of like in a hole and I didn't know how to get out of it. So there comes a point where, if you're suffering and you have to realize, like, oh my gosh, I actually need help because I didn't know how to get out of the hole. I was like, well, if I'm feeling this way, then professional help would probably help me, right? So it's just like being able to take that first step, and that was scary because I was like, okay, I got to invest in myself and I have to like do these things, and then it's like, but that elevated me, right? So I got to level up, which was great because I took that's all about that worthiness, worthy of taking time for yourself, worthy of investing in yourself. But the thing is that you learn how to use it as a tool, right? And so that's like my intention of working with my clients is like, wow, you do have this superpower. Let's use it. So you learn how to actually use it as a coping skill. And nowadays, I mean, I have to practice what I preach, right? So I do use it on a daily basis. I do use it as a way for my own mental health. I'm not always working on my art series, even though I do love my art series that I like to go exhibit in galleries or, put in shows or magazines and things like that. But that's not like my everyday. I'll get inspired and I'll work on that, or I'll write a book, or I'll do, I have different projects that I'm working on. But for my own mental well-being, it's a it's a daily practice. And if you don't know how to use it as a daily practice, that's what I would say would get support because there is that level of, like you said, judgment. And with art therapy, there is no judgment. It's you're honoring your feelings. And some of those feelings are really ugly. And some of those, those shadow parts of yourself that you don't like or whatever's coming up, um, life experiences, they need to be honored and released, or at least have a container or hold space for it. Because we all go through, parts of, times that we don't like and parts of ourselves that we don't like, and learning how to accept that. Um, yeah, I hope I answered your question there.
Yeah, you did. I love that answer. It's like really honoring like what you're going through in order to bypass that mind chatter and into just like the moment.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think it's like really allowing yourself to feel those feelings. Is that what I'm hearing? Or
Yeah, most definitely. And then, there's practices of like calming the nervous system and, just being able to get into that flow. So it could be meditation, it could be an art technique, or, different ways of, connecting with your body as well. Calm it down.
mm, what is one of your favorite ways to connect to the body and just to like your nervous system?
Yeah, well, the one that I've been doing recently, I used to meditate and then I would create, or sometimes I would do yoga, and then noticing that I was just in the moment. And I'm like, oh man, that's so much easier to create when you're totally in the now versus like stuck in your head. But recently, a really quick fix has been like bilateral drawing, like doing circle eights. So just like circle eights, breathing in, release, breathing in, release. You can literally do it like this, several times, but getting some actual oil glands out and doing it with your whole body, putting it on a wall, just doing some different experimental, putting on some bilateral music because it's using different parts of your brain. It really does help get you into that flow state and really relaxed. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of that, but I've never actually seen like the method. So thank you for sharing that. That's awesome.
I show it on my Instagram. You're welcome to check it out. Art Therapy Online.
Oh, yeah. Definitely check it out. Okay, last question. What are things that inspire you to be happy, and how do other people be happy as well if they're like, stuck in the process?
Well, I always think that like happiness is a choice, and it is something you have to nurture, and you have to, bring it into your life. So I don't feel like it's just kind of like it just happens. I always feel like it's something that you have to like really, think about for yourself. And I know if you're like suffering from depression, it's got to be like really, really tough, and sometimes you might need, medication, or you might need some other things to help you get the hormones balanced. But, as far as like just like everyday life, I think that self-care is really important for me. I do my self-care so that I can be present for my family. Like, I love my family and my husband and my kids, and, I just know that if I'm not happy, then, that's gonna have that ripple effect. And that's why I want, to, like, fill my cup so that I have, can offer to my kids and my husband, and then also to my clients, and, and then that has that ripple effect to everyone else, and I feel like it's kind of like our responsibility to take care of ourselves, right? Our responsibility, like for our mental health, our happiness, and that will have ripple effects in the world. That's healing for the world to do the work, right?
Yeah, and like being that person that is creating joy from within is actually, it's almost, it sounds like a cycle. So it's like you're giving joy to them, they're gonna give it back to you, and like it's just like a continual figure eight, like you mentioned.
Yeah. Oh, I like that symbolism.
Yeah, tied it all together. But no, I love what you
Okay.
said. I love it. Family, self-care.
Yes.
Yeah, that's so cool. And yeah, is that something that really lights you up, like being with family and friends and art and
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely like to spend my time of all of that, like just balancing it all, of just being able to connect with the people that I love, and yeah, and my community as well. I connect with my community in that way too. So
mm,
yeah.
that's true. I think that creating those connections is what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah. Make the world go round, right? It makes it all better. We all
Yeah,
need to connect with ourselves,
absolutely.
with other people. Yeah.
Mm, beautiful. Thank you for that reminder, and thank you for sharing your story. I really, really appreciate it. And yeah, I acknowledge you for all the amazing work you're doing and continuing to do, and also just that practice of self-care. So yeah, I think it's just really powerful. And thank you so much, Leah.
Well, thank you, Stephanie, for doing this wonderful like interview series. And like I said, I'm excited to hear the other interviews and be inspired. So thank you for the work that you're doing too.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.